We know there's all different kinds of needs for finances. I mean, I've met transition folks that have a spouse that make a lot of money and they have a lot of leeway to figure out. I even was talking to a successful business owner of a veteran-owned small business the other day, and he said to me, "My wife's got a really good job, otherwise I wouldn't have been able to do this." So it's a little leg up if you have those resources. But if you need work very soon, then you really need to be willing to accept work that you may feel isn't, you're not, I don't even know how to
Yeah.
say this
No, it's
best.
a great, I love it. I'm like, say it again, Irene. Yeah. You
Okay,
need
you
work, you gotta
may
be able to
have
work.
to be willing
Can't be
to
too
accept
picky,
a
right?
job that you feel is beneath you. You've got to reframe that. It's a means to an end. You have to have faith. You are going to get more work from having work and doing a good job than you are from sitting in your living room and
Welcome to the Vets to PM Military Transition Academy podcast, where we feature veterans and professionals who've made their mark in business and corporate America to help you achieve a meaningful, lucrative post-service career. On this episode, Irene Glaeser, Army veteran, sits down with Misty to discuss the role your mindset plays in your transitions. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Military Transition Academy podcast, sponsored by Vets to PM. Today we are here with Irene, and she knows a thing or two about transitions. And so she's a veteran and a business owner, and so much more than that. Welcome, Irene, to the show. I'd love for you to introduce yourself to the audience and share a little bit about your transitions.
Okay, well, we're going to have a lot of fun today, Misty, and I can't thank you enough for having me on today. It's a real honor and a privilege. I've been in this community with transition vets for a while, and I find that every day I meet a veteran and learn something new about their experience, and I just sort of weave it into my thought process and what I like to talk about because our experiences are all unique and different. So I'm Irene Glaeser. I'm a daughter of immigrants, and I always tell people that's make the middle name is Lithuanian. And the reason I tell people that is, many of us who were raised in a home that where immigrants are our parents learn the value of hard work very early, by necessity in many cases, or just by the process where people went through wars and they come here, they're escaping a lot of things and they want a better life for their kids, but they know that that takes hard work and perseverance. I first enlisted when I was 18, so I came into the Army as a private, and that was an interesting experience as it is for anyone. I did go to jump school very early in 1983 because I'm not super young as a private at a time where the percentage of women to men was very, very, very low. And so I went through a lot there. I did leave the active Army and transition to the reserve, which meant that I needed to look for a job and ended up back in the Army for the rest of a very lengthy career, which took me to 31 years. Then I transitioned again. And then I transitioned from the government where I went right after the military. So I'm transitioned from the government and I'm a CEO, a service disabled veteran owned small business. And I feel like with that breadth of experience, I have street cred to be on this
Yeah,
podcast. And that was a
absolutely.
long introduction, but I did the best I could to summarize it.
Yeah, so small business, and I know it's a pretty VUCA environment right now for small businesses. And so there's a lot of military service members and veterans that are transitioning and they're thinking about the entrepreneur route and thinking about maybe the small business route. So what are some, leadership tips and tools that you would give those transitioning service members, those that are thinking about maybe I want to, own my own business or do my own thing, something maybe untraditional than going into, the corporate world?
Well, actually, everything that a veteran chooses to do after they transition is probably untraditional
Yeah, true.
because
Good
there's
point.
so many options available, as you know. Form a nonprofit, form your own business, work for industry, volunteer exclusively, and then that dreaded do nothing at all. That's probably the one I recommend against. Um, so there's some mindsets, whether or not they're actually true, that the outside world has when they think about veterans. If they serve themselves, they know they're going to get ethical principles of leadership and other qualities that make up a good service member. So they're going to get leadership, they're going to get selfless service, they're going to get loyalty, they're going to get honesty and integrity, and that's just a few of them. And if you're from a military connected background, whether you are a family member or you are a friend and generally a supporter of veterans or a veteran yourself, you're going to know that. But that doesn't describe a probably the largest majority of American population now. Our greatest generation are leaving us, and many of our drafty Vietnam veterans during a time when the draft meant everybody signed up, they're leaving us as well. So we joined in an all volunteer army at post Vietnam, and now we volunteer. We volunteer to go to war. We volunteer to lay our lives down for our nation and for our buddies. And sometimes that translates into we're angry or we have issues or we don't know how to take direction. We only know how to give direction. So it's very important for veterans to get access to their own community first, because transitioning is tough, and find a community early, whether it's the VFW or whether it's the DAV, but more importantly, all of the nonprofits out there that are there to assist that service member through a tough transition.
Yeah, and even most, organizations and companies nowadays have veterans resources groups, so when you join an organization, the first thing that I did when I was hired on and my first day is I had a really good working relationship with the recruiter because I had, was employed there during COVID. So it was a very crazy time, virtual interviews, lots of slow processes. And so we had a really great working relationship. And I asked her, like, are there any veterans in my salary grades that I could possibly be introduced to? And for 3 years and 7 months, I had this super tight community of veterans in my organization, plus my, team as well. And that really kind of took the edge off. They helped me, even from drafting an email, having a conversation, how to address people, and also giving me a lot of warning about, hey, this per my last email crap, that's not going to work, or it won't be well received. So I 100% love that. Tap into your community first, and your community are those fellow veterans, and, and then maybe find another community that can help you out with some other things.
There are a number of professional organizations that exist that sort of point themselves towards corporate America as well, but just joining, you can learn a lot. And the more knowledge you have, the more you can focus your next move, the more you understand about the interest industry or nonprofit or even your passions that you think you might start a business in. The more you understand, the more knowledge you have, the more courage you'll have to get out there and connect with those communities. And I know I could go into all the resources. I actually see Doc at a number of them.
Yeah.
But there's some very large, you mentioned agencies that support veterans, and somehow JP Morgan Chase comes right to the top of my mind. But big organizations like Amazon that celebrate veterans. And when they're a lot smaller, then maybe they don't have dedicated resources. And that's where you have to form your own. You have to, okay, I'm a veteran. Who else here is a veteran? There's small businesses that have emphasis groups. And why not one for veterans? But courage is really important because, as I alluded to earlier, some people form stereotypes. And I have upfront and personal through family members seen, for example, and in particular, what special operators go through after that high intensity of being in combat, of having to make snap decisions in very fluid environments and with seconds to think about it. Those can be very good qualities, but they come in to, say, for the corporate world, and they're just shocked at how slowly things move compared to the way they're used to, or they're shocked at how menial, how they feel the job is that they got hired to do, where they feel like they could do a lot more but aren't being asked to, and even in some cases do more and then kind of be told that's enough, that isn't your job. And I say this not just about special operatives at all. I say that about all of us, because even if you've been in combat, which now there's less conflicts that we're in combat for, but that could change it on a dime. But even if you've just served and you're at the ready constantly, that can also impact your feelings about yourself, your feelings about your worth, which are in those cases very positive, and you're looking for that same purpose and being valued
Yeah.
when you transition.
Yeah, it's hard to, I hear from military members all the time, that I just don't know what my purpose is, or, this mission is, I don't feel like this mission is important. And that's one thing, it's really kind of what you do prior to getting out of the military that's really going to help you sort of adapt to that, because your purpose can go anywhere with you. It doesn't have to be tied to a mission. It doesn't have to be tied to an organization. I often say, develop better human beings who go on and develop better human beings. And I can do that at the gas station. I can do that at work. I can do that at my gym. And so it's important to sort of, have this purpose, this overall purpose that you can really bring with you wherever you go. So then that way you're really finding your worth in the greater picture and not just what you're actually doing day to day. It's like, how are you making people feel? Are you a gap filler, but also being empathetic and sympathetic to the fact that might not be well received? Sometimes people might view that as you might be stepping on people's toes. And, and as far as the slowness of sometimes the outside world of the military, I just talked to a veteran yesterday and he said, I don't know what's wrong with me, but I'm so tired all the time. And I told him, I said, I know what's wrong with you. And he's like, what? And I was like, well, it's nothing really that's wrong with you. It's just your body is finally able to decompress. It's not in this fight or flight mode anymore. And you're actually just doing things that are actually normal. Like you're working at a normal pace, but you're so used to, working at a high ops tempo that your body has no idea how to react.
Yeah, that's really true. I mean, I get told all the time, and I'm sure you do too, love your positive energy. Well, my energy wasn't positive at all when I retired. I went into government and had to get used to a person who was younger than my own adult children kind of being flip with me. And I even wasn't used to my own name. I had been Private Weishvilla, and after I married, I was Lieutenant Glaeser when I chose to go the opposite route, all the way to Colonel Glaeser. And suddenly this very young person is going, that's not how it works, Irene. So being humble can be hard. We military folks, while we are serving, we're used to taking direction and giving direction. And just by the fact of you've been in for a little while makes you a leader, and you start being a leader, and then you spend a lifetime of being a better leader. And even the lowest ranking enlisted person will lead an effort, and honorably so. I mean, I remember having, as a private in basic training, I was in charge of KP, cleaning up the kitchen. And so I had to tell other privates what their task would be to accomplish that mission. To get that positive energy, you really need time. You need time to be introspective. I've seen people take a year sabbatical and circumvent the globe, something that I said, well, gee, I wish I had the money and time to do that. Some of us have to jump into other roles. But you're right, decompress and check in with yourself, because you can't help others if you can't help yourself. People will not care about how much you know. They're going to want to they're going to want to know about how much you care. And you can't care for others if you can't care for yourself. So very early in that time, you're going to need relationships, as we stated, and you're going to need involvement, as we talked about. The last thing I'll say on that, which was the first part of your comments, most all organizations have a vision, and then they also have a mission statement, and then there are goals.
Yeah.
Value statements. So those are all things that you have to publish in your brain on yourself. And only you can do that. You can get expertise from everywhere, but only you can do that and determine what is your purpose. And sometimes you feel very purposeless, I apologize. And it can take time to do that. So join those organizations. Got to put in a plug for the National Veteran Small Business Coalition, where I'm on the board of directors, but I've gained so much support. Had I not joined that, I know I wouldn't feel as confident as I do today about running a small business after all that time spent in the military and government.
Yeah, and honestly, when you separate and retire from the military, very similar to how it took you a long amount of time to adapt to the military way of life, it's going to take you probably a little bit longer to adapt to your new way of life in the civilian sector. But now that's, you're civilian now, and that is your sector that you operate in. And I always tell veterans, do three things. Make the military a part of your life and not your life. Like, even though you sign the dotted line, and yes, every time you put your uniform on, you agree to die for your country. Like, it's a pillar of your life. It doesn't have to be your entire life. Number two, get some hobbies. And number three, create a community around you that has a whole bunch of different, human beings, so you can learn from them. I always say, if you're the smartest person in the room, then you're probably in the wrong room. But lately, I've started to realize that maybe if I feel like I'm the smartest person in the room, maybe I don't have my growth mindset on. Maybe I'm not asking the right questions. Maybe I'm not really getting to know the people. And so now we have this opportunity to really kind of live our best life after we've served and protected, other people's lives for so long. So we need to take advantage of that. The first thing that people start thinking about is, how am I going to make money? And although that is a very important question, and in order to meet your, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we obviously have to bring in some income. But I would also encourage people to ask the question, what kind of lifestyle do you want for your post-service life? And then start job searching based on that lifestyle.
Right. And we know there's all different kinds of needs for finances. I mean, I've met transition folks that have a spouse that make a lot of money, and they have a lot of leeway to figure out. I even was talking to a successful business owner of a veteran-owned small business the other day, and he said to me, my wife's got a really good job, otherwise I wouldn't have been able to do this. So It's a little leg up if you have those resources. Um, but if you need work very soon, then you really need to be willing to accept work that you may feel isn't, you're not, I don't even know how to
Yeah.
say this
No, it's
best.
a
You're
great,
not,
I love it. I'm like, say it again, Irene. Yeah. If you
okay,
need
you
work, you got to be
may
able to
have to
work.
be
You can't
willing to
be too picky,
accept a
right?
job that you feel is beneath you. You've got to reframe that. It's a means to an end. You have to have faith. You are going to get more work from having work and doing a good job than you are from sitting in your living room and telling yourself that this job is beneath you. And I will share something with you that I don't share with very many people, that when I was job searching, the first time I got out of the military, because as I said, I got out, went reserve, and came back, I was a military police officer. And I thought, well, I don't really, after what I went through, I don't want to be a street cop, maybe yet, because I don't really need that adrenaline. So I applied to be a federal prison guard. I'd been a captain in the Army and I filed to be a low ranking prison guard. I figured, well, I'll be safe and I'll be using my background. And yes, by now I have a master's degree. It is beneath me. And guess what, Misty? I didn't get the job. I,
Oh,
I mean, that's really overwhelming. And veterans have to understand that when you don't get the job, it really has nothing to do with you in almost every case.
it's really,
There's
yeah,
reason. Yeah, you can be
100%.
over. Yeah, you can be overqualified. You can, of course, be underqualified, or they have to advertise it but already have their person. So this is where, you need to check in with yourself and your community often and tell yourself, okay, all right, I'm okay. I'm going to pick myself up like I always did when I was in the military. And, you brought up a good point about not letting the service define who you are. That's tough. I mean, I kind of define myself because the Army defined me for so long, but you can't rest on it. And I always tell people, and it works in most cases, but try not to go by your rank as your title after you get out. It's hard for a lot of people. But, I get the Christmas cards from Colonel so and so, and they sort of forget to put retired after it. And I'm kind of like, time to move on, time to move on. But it's a personal choice.
Yeah, and one thing that I really try to mentor military service members, people that are currently serving, and veterans is like, you are so much more than your rank. You're so much more than your title. And even I have a great group of, people from my last company, Continental Tire, and we met this week. And, when we met and we had wings together at Buffalo Wild Wings, we didn't talk about work. We talked about kids, we talked about football, we talked about different hobbies and stuff like that. And it really made me realize like they're more than their jobs too. And they embody that. Like not once did we talk about the company and any drama or any gossip. We talked about like we had all these little kids. I mean, I have the oldest kid in the bunch. So obviously my 18-year-old didn't join me, but they have little kids. And it was so cool to see that they're making work a pillar of their life. And it's something that all of us really need to do, is that work is a pillar. And Irene, you're probably going to be in veteran status longer than you served. I pray that I'm in veteran status longer than I served. So it's important that we're kind of living our best post-service life with way more than all these, war stories and ruminations. It's like, I did a post today. Today's actually my birthday, 47. And
Congratulations.
I feel great.
Congratulations.
And I posted and I was like, I don't even think about the military. Like, honestly, unless I'm doing a podcast, I mean, obviously I serve veterans, but I don't ever truly like ruminate or tell stories or anything. I actually choose not to, not for any reason except that I want to enjoy my post-service life and create more memories. And that's what a lot of us veterans really need to start doing. We're so much more than our duty title.
We are, Misty. And, I think honestly, I can't put number of years on it, but the first early years of the transition are really the hardest. As we move on and that service is further and further behind us, we can look upon it with laughter. We kind of forget the bad times. We made buddies that we're going to have forever in our lives. Maybe we have, like I do, the distinct benefit of seeing them at events that I attend because we're in the same ecosystem. But, it's almost a comfort to just know that I wore the uniform didn't wear me. I'm not a military person. I'm me first, and then I'm a veteran. So I wanted to talk briefly, because I know we're getting closer to the end, about leadership. You learn a lot about leadership, and it never leaves you. And I think that working for bad leaders is extremely important. And you don't feel it then, but you get a whole playbook on how you don't want to be. And then when you have a great leader, and in my case, I seem to get every other leader, fantastic, compassionate, cared about the troops, toxicity, fantastic. And so I feel like I've experienced the entire range, because particularly in the early days when I was a woman in the military police corps, I would get evaluations that really in subtle ways said that I was not valuable, and even worse, not worth promoting because I had no future. I even had that told to me. You learn from people like that. And I've developed my own, you get 3 takeaways in a lot of these military briefings. And I've got my own 3 takeaways, and I call them in AAA. So the first one is be accessible. They used to have open door policies. They still do in the military, but they kind of weren't open door policies, because if you skip your chain of command and go to your boss's boss's boss, there will 9 times out of 10 be very subtle repercussions.
Yeah,
Too
100%.
Yeah, too subtle to file a whistleblower claim and winding up in investigations. I learned a lot about that as well. But make sure your folks at the lowest level know that you're walking around, you're talking to them, you're a leader that they can count on and trust. And then my next A is accountability. When people make mistakes that are beneath you, you take responsibility. You're that leader. And fortunately, the military does recognize that. If you jam your weapon and God forbid something bad happens on a range, as a small example, that leader will be disciplined. And we learn to do that, but we have to remember to do that. And it's a tough thing sometimes where you're in charge of a large organization. You need to show and demonstrate how you accept responsibility for everything that happens, good and bad, in that organization or formation. The last thing I'll say is authenticity. Authenticity, it's my third A. And the Army likes to use a term, does the audio match the video? Ooh. But if you say one thing and then you go out and you conduct your own life in a different way, but you're asking them to do this over here, that's a bad thing to get into. You need to be your ethical, authentic self and ensure that your actions match the words and guidance that you are giving folks that work for you and your teammates. So those are my 3A takeaways: accessibility, accountability, and authenticity.
Yeah, it's like those 3 A's, being accessible. I mean, you're going to have to be accessible, in your civilian role or as a small business owner or in entrepreneurship, whatever it is. Like, people are going to want to talk to you and pick your brain and whatever it may be. And of course, you need some boundaries. But I will say that, as I watched my husband transition the same day that I did, so he retired as a senior NCO as well. And the one thing that, that is really working in his favor is that he's always available to the people that he works with or for. in many different ways, and then also accountability, accountability goes up and down. Like you have to know that when your team does really well, you're not going to get any sort of the glory. Your team's going to get the glory, right? As it should be. But when something doesn't go well, guess who's going to hear the most, right? And that's you. And you have to be able to still have your direct reports backs, and you still have to be super optimistic. And again, you just have to still be accessible, right? And then authentic. Yeah, people want to see you walk the walk and talk the talk. Because the second that you don't do it, it's like we have this saying in the Air Force, when you're a drill instructor or a PME instructor, you live in a glass house. And so whatever you do, people are waiting for you to mess up. Well, that's the same thing as a leader in the civilian sector. You know what I mean? So you got to walk the walk and talk the talk. So as we, I was going to say, as we wrap up, Irene, I know that you talk a lot about leadership and stuff like that. Talk to us about one characteristic. I think you mentioned kindness.
I was going to say be kind. That's what I normally say, be kind to yourself and others. Yeah. But I do have a tip that goes back to authenticity. There is so much noise out there, Misty, about personal branding. And I saw one that came with a whole class on how to brand yourself to include be funny, be humorous. People will remember you more. And I say not everybody is funny and humorous. And people who are introverts sometimes are much better listeners. I've been an extrovert my whole life, and I happen to be funny when I want to be, or it just comes out. But I recognize the value of everyone's personality type. So, listen to all of the advice out there, but pick the things that work best for you and how you want to be perceived as authentic. And then, Misty, smile a lot. It's infectious. It'll make you feel better. It'll make others feel like you want to help them and not yourselves. So it's not one takeaway, it's a few, but those are things that are very important for me to get out there.
Yeah, and one thing that transitioning service members need to realize is that, you have your whole life now. Like, hopefully you get to wake up every single day to live your best post-service life. Not every day has to be a PR. It doesn't have to be a personal record. You can make mistakes and then just say, like I often say to veterans, like, prove to me, look at your resume and count how many times you put resilient, adaptable, adjustable, agile, blah, 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 all those buzzwords, right? And I don't say that with disrespect, but it's true. Like that's what we're known for, right? That we're flexible in whatever it is. Prove to me that you are, prove to the world that you are. And so when something doesn't go your way, so what, now what? What will you do? And how will you treat the people around you when you're, maybe not having a good go at it? And I often say to people, like, it's easy to be all good when everything is all good. But when you are sort of in the shit show, how you treat people, how you treat yourself, that's how you're going to be remembered.
It's funny you mentioned buzzwords, and of course we can talk all day, and I know we're almost out of time, but those are great for resumes to get your foot in the door. After that, it's all about you. It's not about agility and flexibility and seasoned leader and all those things. If you get your foot in the door, then you can establish your credibility, work ethic, and all the things that you learned while serving in the U.S. Armed Forces. And I thank your veteran audience. And I thank you. It's been a lot of fun for this time that we've spent together. And I really hope that it's been beneficial to your audience.
Yeah. Thank you, Irene. And I know that you've gone through a lot of transitions in your life and in your career, and we appreciate you feeding the veteran community. And so for those of you who are listening, be accessible, be accountable, be authentic, and most importantly, be kind. And if we want to connect with you, Irene, how can they do that?
I'm I'm a big LinkedIn person. I'm on it all the time. Just connect with me. You'll have my spelling of my name out there. It can confuse people, but I'm so proud of it because it is a Lithuanian name, a great partner to the United States now. And yeah, use LinkedIn. I check my messages and I am very happy to engage with anyone that seeks me out and wants a little encouragement or advice.
Thank you, Irene.
Thanks for joining us at the Military Transition Academy. If we sparked your interest and you're ready to learn more, visit vets2pm.com. We'd love to help you prepare for a meaningful and lucrative post-service career.